My husband's mother humiliated me and banned me from dinner, until the owner walked in and did this. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved one. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. I had spent hours getting ready. New dress, hair done, makeup just right. Tonight was supposed to be a big step. My husband's mother had invited me to her birthday dinner at one of the nicest restaurants in town. I thought maybe, finally, she was warming up to me. I even picked out her favorite flowers to bring. When I arrived, I saw them already seated at a long table near the back. Everyone was dressed up, laughing over drinks and appetizers. I smiled and waved, but no one waved back. I walked over to the hostess and gave my name. She frowned and looked at the reservation. Then I heard her voice behind me. "She's not with us," my mother-in-law said sharply, stepping forward. "There's been a mistake. She wasn't actually invited." The hostess looked confused. "But her name is on the list." Emile leaned in and whispered something I couldn't hear. The hostess nodded awkwardly. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said to me. "There must have been an update to the reservation." I just stood there, stunned. My husband didn't say a word. He looked down at his napkin. His sister turned away. No one made eye contact. I was told to come," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My husband said, "She doesn't represent this family," Emile cut in loudly. "It was a misunderstanding. You can go now." A couple at the next table glanced over. I felt like I was shrinking inside myself. I looked back at my husband. Nothing. No defense. Not even a glance. I took a shaky breath and turned to leave, trying to keep it together until I got outside. My vision was already blurry. That's when I heard my name. "Is that you?" a man's voice called out. I looked up. The restaurant owner, Mr. Patel, was walking toward me with a surprised smile. He opened his arms like he hadn't seen me in years. "You look amazing. What are you doing standing around here?" he said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Before I could answer, he turned to the hostess. "She's with me. Set her up at the VIP booth." I blinked in confusion. "Actually," he added, looking toward Emile's table, "who told her she wasn't welcome?" My Emile stiffened. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Mr. Patel looked at me again, his tone calm but firm. "Your family here. I won't have anyone treating you like you don't belong." And just like that, the entire table went silent. From the very beginning, I was never what she pictured for her son. I met my husband, Jake, during college. We clicked instantly. Same sense of humor, same love for late-night ramen and binge-watching crime shows. But the first time he introduced me to his mom, I could tell she didn't see me the way he did. She gave me that tight smile, the kind where someone's trying to hide how unimpressed they are. She looked me up and down like she was measuring something. Her first words weren't, "Nice to meet you," but, "Oh, you wore jeans." It only got worse after we got engaged. Suddenly, everything I did was a little off. My job wasn't impressive enough. My laugh was a little loud. She once told me while sipping her wine, "I suppose Jake always liked down-to-earth types." Jake always brushed it off. "She's just like that with everyone," he'd say. "She'll come around." She never did. At family events, she'd leave me out of conversations, correct the way I said things, and once even introduced me to her friends as Jake's little project. That one stung. Still, I kept trying. I baked her favorite cake for her birthday. I helped her organize a charity auction. I even laughed at her dry, condescending jokes just to keep the peace. So when Jake told me she'd invited me to her birthday dinner, at that fancy French place she's always bragged about, I thought maybe things were changing. He said she wanted it to be a fresh start, a real family moment. I wanted to believe him. I even let myself get excited. I bought a dress I couldn't really afford, skipped work early so I'd have time to get ready. I picked up a bouquet of white lilies, her favorite. I remember looking in the mirror before I left and thinking, she'll see I belong. She'll finally see I'm good enough. But the moment I stepped into the restaurant, I could feel it. The way her eyes narrowed when she saw me. The way she whispered to the hostess. The way no one got up to greet me, not even Jake. I stood there with my gift bag and flowers, looking like the only person who didn't get the joke. Because the truth was, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup, one she'd carefully planned. And Jake, he knew. He just didn't care enough to. Stop it. When I walked into the restaurant, I expected Jake to stand up, smile, maybe even wave me over. But he didn't move. He was already seated beside his mother, sipping wine like everything was normal. He didn't even look at me. The table was full. His parents, his sister and her fiancé, 2 uncles, even a cousin who lived out of state. I searched his face for some kind of signal, some warmth. Nothing. The hostess walked ahead of me with a menu in hand. "Right this way," she said, but we didn't even make it to the table before my mother-in-law raised her voice. "There's no need for another seat," she said sharply, loud enough that nearby tables turned to look. "She's not staying." The hostess glanced back at me, confused. "Sorry, I have her on the guest list. Oh, that was a mistake. Emile cut in smoothly, like she was doing me a favor. She was never supposed to be on the reservation. I had it fixed earlier today. The hostess looked awkward, flipping through the notes. Well, her name is still here. My face burned. I looked straight at Jake. His eyes stayed fixed on the glass in front of him. Not a word. Not a glance. Not even a twitch. My hands felt numb. Jake, I said softly. He cleared his throat and finally looked up, but only briefly. Mom thought, maybe it was best if it was just family tonight. His mother nodded, as if he'd just said something brave. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. I am family, I said. That's when she smiled. That smile. Maybe next time, sweetheart. This is just family. The table chuckled politely. Someone clinked a fork against a glass. I could feel every eye in the room pressing down on me like heat. I stood frozen for a second, unsure if this was really happening. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words stuck. The hostess gave me an apologetic look. I nodded at her, blinked quickly to keep the tears from falling, and turned to leave. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked out, trying to keep my back straight, my shoulders up. But my hands were shaking. I clutched the gift bag and flowers to my chest like a shield. The worst part wasn't her. It was him. He just sat there and let it happen. I was almost at the door, holding back tears, when I heard my name. Wait, is that you? I turned, wiping the corner of my eye quickly, hoping no one had noticed. But there he was, Mr. Darcy, the restaurant owner, stepping out from behind the bar with a surprised look on his face and a huge smile. He walked over with his arms slightly open, like he hadn't seen me in years. He looked just the same, kind eyes, silver hair, that calm way he always carried himself. Wow, he said, stopping in front of me. You look wonderful. What are you doing just standing by the door? Are you here with someone? I tried to smile but couldn't make it stick. Not anymore, I said softly. He raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? I hesitated. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to ruin his night. But he was already frowning, confused. They told me I wasn't invited after all, I said, keeping my voice low. It's a family dinner. I guess I'm not considered family. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just stared at me. Then his face changed, not angry, but sharper, more focused. Protective. Who told you that? He asked. I gave him a small shrug, glancing toward the table without saying names. He followed my gaze, his eyes landing on them instantly. His expression didn't budge. Then he looked back at me. Come with me, he said. I shook my head. It's okay, really. I was just going to head out. No, he said gently but firmly. Not when you're here, not like this. He paused. You think I forgot what you did for my daughter? You gave her hours of your time when she couldn't afford a tutor. You helped her write her college essay. You sat with her through every mock interview. She's at Yale now because of you. I felt my chest tighten. I hadn't thought about that in a while. He smiled again, softer this time. You're not walking out of my restaurant like you don't belong. Not on my watch. I didn't know what to say. But suddenly I wasn't crying anymore. He turned toward the staff and raised his hand slightly. Get her a table. Best seat in the house. And then, just loud enough for the room to hear, he added, make sure everyone knows she's a guest of the owner. Every head at that table turned, including my husband, and his mother's smile dropped. Mr. Darcy didn't waste a second. After giving instructions to the staff, he turned and walked straight toward their table with a calm, deliberate stride. The room seemed to hold its breath. The laughter and clinking of silverware stopped as people watched him approach. My mother-in-law looked up, confused at first. Then she realized he was headed straight for her. She sat up straighter, adjusting her scarf like she was preparing for a photo. But his face wasn't smiling. Excuse me, he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Did you just tell my guest she wasn't welcome? Emile blinked, trying to process the question. Your guest? She repeated, glancing at me, then back at him. Yes, he said, without hesitation. That woman you turned away at the entrance. She's a close friend of my family. She's helped us more than you can imagine. And tonight, she was supposed to be treated like a guest of honor. My husband's sister's fork hit her plate with a soft clink. Emile gave a little nervous laugh. I think there's been some confusion. This was a private family dinner. No, Mr. Darcy said firmly. The only confusion here is that you thought you could humiliate someone in my restaurant and get away with it. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. It was just, we didn't mean to cause trouble. It was a misunderstanding. He shook his head. You told my staff to remove her name from the reservation. You made her stand at the door like a stranger. You embarrassed her in front of an entire dining room. He took a breath. That's not a misunderstanding. That's cruelty. Now even tables across the room were watching. Jake finally spoke, his voice quiet. Mom, just apologize. But she didn't. She just stared at him, stunned, like she couldn't believe this was actually happening. Mr. Darcy turned to the nearest server. Please cancel their orders. They're done for the night. My husband stood up. Wait. Come on. You don't have to do that. The owner didn't even glance at him. I do. People like that don't eat here. He turned back to Mil. You're no longer welcome in my restaurant. Ever. There was a heavy silence. Chairs shifted. A few diners quietly clapped. Emil's face turned red as she slowly stood up, grabbing her purse with stiff hand. The rest of the family followed, silent and awkward. Jake looked back at me once, but I didn't return the look. And just like that, they walked out. As they shuffled toward the exit, no one spoke. My mother-in-law kept her head down, clutching her purse like it might anchor her to the floor. Jake walked stiffly behind her, jaw clenched, eyes darting between me and the door. His sister muttered something under her breath, but no one responded. They all looked small now, not like the proud, polished group I had walked in to see earlier, just a group of people caught in their own mess. And I stayed. Mr. Darcy gave me a soft nod, then turned to his staff. Set her up at table 1. The hostess, clearly relieved, smiled at me and led me through the room like I was royalty. Every step echoed with a strange, quiet power. I wasn't hiding anymore. They seated me in the best spot, by the window, under a soft chandelier. The napkins were folded like origami. The silverware sparkled. I sat down slowly, still holding the flowers I had brought for her. Would you like to order? The hostess asked kindly. Before I could answer, Mr. Darcy appeared again. Tonight's on us, he said warmly. Get her the house wine, and bring out the truffle risotto. I felt a small, stunned smile break through. One by one, the staff started treating me like I was someone important, like I belonged. They refilled my water without being asked, brought out warm bread. The manager himself brought over a small plate of appetizers just to try. I sat alone at that elegant table, surrounded by candlelight and quiet music, not lonely, but calm. Not humiliated, but proud. Not because I'd done something dramatic, but because I hadn't backed down. I hadn't begged. I'd let the truth speak for itself. Across the room, a woman about my age caught my eye. She gave me a small thumbs up. Another couple passed on their way out and paused at my table. That was wild, the man said, smiling. Good for you. The woman nodded. She had it coming. I laughed quietly. Thank you. They walked off, and I took a sip of wine. It was smooth, crisp, and perfect. I leaned back in the seat, the tension finally leaving my shoulders. I looked at the flowers in front of me, the same ones I'd brought for her. I placed them gently on the table and let them sit there. I didn't need to give them away. Not anymore. When we got home, he slammed the door harder than necessary. I followed slowly, still holding my purse, not saying anything. I wasn't sure what version of him I was about to face. The quiet one who watched it all happen, or the one who suddenly remembered he had something to say. He turned to me in the kitchen, jaw tight, arms crossed. Well, he said, that was completely unnecessary. I blinked. What was? You embarrassed my mother, he snapped. In front of everyone. In public. I let out a short laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. I embarrassed her? She was trying to have a nice dinner. You turned it into some kind of performance, he said. You should have just left quietly. I did, I said. I was walking out. She humiliated me at the door. You just sat there. And I left. And then you pulled the owner into it, he said. Made it this huge, dramatic thing. I stared at him, my voice low. He saw me crying and came over. I didn't make a scene, Jake. Your mom did. She didn't mean it that way, he said, pacing. She just wanted a peaceful night. I shook my head slowly. She wanted me to feel small. She wanted me to know I'd never be one of you. And you let her. He didn't answer. Just kept pacing. Then he stopped and looked at me. You owe her an apology. That one hit harder than anything he'd said all night. I waited, thinking he might take it back. He didn't. You want me to apologize, I repeated. She's hurt, he said. That restaurant's important to her. Now she's banned. You could have handled it better. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like he'd watched an entirely different evening. You didn't stand up for me, I said quietly. Not once. Not when she erased my name. Not when she told me I wasn't family. You just sat there. I didn't want to escalate it, he said, sounding tired. It wasn't the place. No, I said. It was exactly the place. He didn't respond. He just walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I stood there for a long time, feeling more alone than I ever had at that dinner. Eventually, I went to the guest room, shut the door behind me, and lay down fully dressed. No one said goodnight. Lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling of the guest room, something inside me shifted. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like the sound of a door clicking shut for the last time. I thought about all the little moments over the past few years. Times I brushed things off. Times I told myself he's just caught in the middle. That he didn't mean to stay silent. That he was trying to keep the peace. But peace shouldn't come at my expense. Like the time his mother forgot to include me in the family Christmas photo, and he laughed it off. Or when she sent him that article titled When Men Settle Down Too Early, and he said, she just has a weird sense of humor. Or the time she told me to my face that Jake's ex was more polished, and he pretended he didn't hear it. I remembered texting him from the bathroom that night, asking if he'd noticed. He replied, "Don't overthink. Just let it go. Let it go." That had become his favorite phrase. But now I was done. I opened my laptop and started pulling things together. Screenshots. Texts she sent me that Jake never saw. The ones where she called me cheap, or said I was dragging him down. Voice memos from times she didn't know I was recording. Even a few emails where she hinted to others that our marriage was temporary. It wasn't about revenge. It was about being done with silence. I started a folder. I named it Truth. Then I opened another tab and looked up a lawyer. I didn't know what I'd need yet, but I wanted to be ready. I wanted my next move to be smart, clean, fine. This wasn't just about his mother anymore. This was about him. About how he'd shown me, time and time again, that he'd rather upset me than her. That I was always the outsider he expected to keep calm while they poked and pushed. He didn't want a partner. He wanted someone who stayed quiet. But I was done playing that part. Tomorrow, I'd do something different. Something he wouldn't see coming. I didn't know exactly what yet. But I knew it would be mine. And when I finally stood up, I wouldn't ask for a seat at the table. I'd flip the whole damn thing. 2 days later, I sat across from a lawyer in a quiet office downtown. I didn't cry. I didn't fidget. I just slid a folder across the desk, filled with everything I'd collected, screenshots, emails, voice notes, bank statements. He flipped through the pages silently, his brows lifting slightly here and there. "This is substantial," he said finally. "Are you ready for this?" I nodded once. More than ready. Jake didn't know, of course. He thought we were just having a rough patch. He texted me twice that day, short messages. "Dinner with Mom Friday. Be civil. No apology. No reflection. Just instructions like I was a burden to manage." He still didn't get it. But I had learned something important from all of this. When you keep quiet for too long, people mistake your silence for weakness. And I wasn't weak. Not anymore. The lawyer and I worked fast. Turns out, my mother-in-law had gifted Jake a small stake in her boutique consulting firm, just enough to give him a silent financial tie to her success. Enough to show motive, favoritism, dependency. In the folder, I included texts from her, messages where she called me temporary, accused me of trapping him, even suggested Jake could do better if I had just disappeared quietly. Some were from years ago. Others were from last week. I wasn't just going to end the marriage. I was going to end the performance. Friday came. Another dinner. This time at a different restaurant. Not as upscale, but still one she liked to show off on Instagram. Jake had told me to just show up, don't make it weird. His exact words. So I showed up. Hair done, makeup perfect, wearing the same dress I'd worn to her birthday dinner. The one she made sure I never sat down in. They were already at the table when I walked in. Jake stood, surprised to see me walk in with a manila envelope in hand. "What's that?" he asked. I smiled and handed it to him. He opened it. His face went pale. The table fell silent. My mother-in-law reached for the papers like she had a right to see them. She didn't. Jake looked up, eyes wide. "You're divorcing me?" "No," I said softly. "I already did." I turned to leave, pausing just long enough to drop a second envelope on the table, addressed to his mother. It contained printed texts, ready to be shared with her partner. Her face drained of color. For the first time ever, I walked out before they could say a word. And I didn't look back. It didn't take long for the gossip to spread. By the end of the weekend, people were already whispering. A few screenshots had found their way to just the right inbox. Her business partners saw the kind of messages she'd sent. Her family values brand didn't look so shiny anymore. Some of her oldest friends stopped returning her calls. Clients quietly backed out of contracts. She posted a vague statement online about private family matters, but no one bought it. The damage was done. Jake tried to reach out the next week. First, a text. I didn't realize how much she got in my head. "I'm sorry." Then another, "Can we talk?" And then a voicemail, where he actually sounded like he was crying. I didn't respond. He didn't miss me. He missed the version of me that kept her mouth shut. The one that made his life easier. That version didn't exist anymore. Meanwhile, my life started moving, fast. My boss called me into her office one morning, handed me a promotion I wasn't expecting, said she'd been impressed with how I handled a recent project. I knew better. She'd heard about what happened. Word gets around, especially when a story hits the internet. A friend of a friend asked me to speak at a women's networking event. Then someone else asked me to write a short piece for their blog. They titled it "The Night I Got Uninvited," and showed up anyway. It got shared more than I expected. People emailed. Strangers thanked me. Some told me I'd inspired them to finally speak up. It was strange. All I'd done was stop pretending. A few weeks later, I found myself back at the same restaurant, the one where it all started. I didn't plan it. A friend had suggested the place, and I just smiled and said yes. When we walked in, Mr. Dartsey spotted me instantly. He grinned. "Look who's back," He walked over and gave me a hug. Got a table ready for you. Same one by the window. I glanced around. The lighting was warm. The air smelled like rosemary and garlic. A server brought over a glass of wine before I even asked. I sat down, feeling different this time. No nerves. No holding my breath. No hoping someone at another table would make room for me. I wasn't trying to fit in anymore. As I lifted my glass and looked out at the street below, I smiled. Funny how the table always turns when you stop begging for a seat.